Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Questions series presented by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Thank you guys for patiently waiting, and welcome back, Pras. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. Patiently waiting. We're normally 7 to 8 minutes late, so you guys need to account for this from now on. If we're later than 7-8 minutes, then we can apologize. No, I'm kidding. I'm good, man.
Yeah, good to see you again. So for today, we're going to do sort of another chip strategy and chip planning for the next latter half of the season or the last part of the season. So what we'll do is how many chips are left in the top 10K is the first thing. And then we'll address the fixtures and, thinking out loud for Game Week 34 and beyond. And then, we're going to address all the chip options for those who have free hit, wildcard, BB, or just, bench boost and free hit or none. And then we'll deep dive into when is the best time to wildcard, as well as comparing, free hit 33 to 36 to 37. So hopefully, from what we know right now, we'll cover as much as we can about chip strategy. So that's the topics for today. Anything to add, Pras?
Yep. No, I just wanted to ask. I don't see us live. Are we? Is it all good?
I think we're live.
Okay.
Is it not on YouTube?
I don't see it on YouTube.
Okay.
It's just upcoming. Hold on. Maybe I'm wrong. It's. I see ads now. 1 second. Okay. No, we're on. I'm sorry.
Oh, we're on. Okay.
Yeah. We're good. So sorry for that. Yes. So continuing on what Andy said, this is my favorite topic, just strategizing, planning, and seeing what people have in terms of chips and seeing how you can best maximize. But before we go there, I would just remind people that it's not just about the strategy. I think Late Riser put it very well. It's about the players you have during that time, not just the volume of games that you have. But having said that, let's dive into the first slide, which is looking at what is the state of play.
Okay, good. Okay, so I guess we are live. Maybe confusing. Anyways, good to go. Quickly, what do we have here, Pras?
So on this one, it's simply to show people what are you competing against. And this is the chip use in the top 10K. And I was actually surprised to look at this, which is why I wanted to include it, that 85%, almost 85% of top 10K managers have played the wild card. So that is the first surprise. So if you're still holding your wild card, you're in the minority. And another surprising bit was only 50% have used their bench boost. So normally in all seasons, we look at a pairing of wildcard plus bench boost. I mean, I did that with my 26 wildcard and 28 bench boost. A lot of managers did 28 wildcard and 29 bench boost. But there are a lot of people out there who've used their wildcard but hesitated or just basically didn't go for the bench boost. So there will be people who are looking to bench boost later in the season, and that's about 50% of the top 10K. And then I think this one is more obvious. About 70% of managers still have their second free hit left. And again, that's, despite having used the wildcard, and some may have used the bench boost. So there's a mix of people, but I think generally speaking, most have a free hit left and half of them have a bench boost left. So that was basically the idea of this slide. And one other point to make is when we look at top 10K, this is from Live FPL, we only have the picture for top 10K and for everyone else. I reckon there's a lot of people in the 11K to 30K bracket who actually held off on wildcarding, held off on bench boosting. So this number would look very different if we looked at the average 20K manager, because indeed they haven't wildcarded and hence they didn't get all these points over this period. So this pool of people who have to wildcard, I think, will be much bigger in that span.
Are we struggling here, Pras? I'm sorry to interrupt you. Some people are saying we're live. Some people are struggling.
Who's struggling?
So sorry, guys. Matthew Price, I think. It keeps going to the home screen.
I have it open next to me. It's working fine.
Okay, so I guess we keep going.
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. It's
Okay. Hopefully. Okay. Sorry, guys. Hopefully. Okay. So if you refresh the YouTube page, apparently it works. So maybe try a new browser refresh if you don't mind. It's showing perfectly fine on my screen. So, yeah. So refresh should be good. On that note, as you mentioned, Pras, very surprised to see a lot of the bench boost still available. I'm trying to get back on track. And for me, this chart is a good standard engage for all the active and engaged managers in the top 10K. And so the free hit in the game week 30, I think it's good to review, is that 15% of all active managers in the top 10K basically use their free hit in 30. So there are still about 70% of active managers that have yet to use their second free hit. So if 15% is hard to visualize, basically 1,500 players out of 10,000 used their free hit in 30. And if you sorted, so what I did was kind of sort all this into the high EO template team of a free hit in 30. So this chart, obviously on live FPL, is a good indication of what players were mostly used on the free hit in 30. So I use this as a benchmark. So when I'm using a free hit later on, or regardless of a free hit, it can sort of see the numerical value of how much gains that people got from a free hit in 30. And it was actually a very good week to use a free hit for multiple reasons. If you look at this template, you can assume that most managers will play a 3-4-3 or a 3-5-2 based on this template, right? So you're either fielding Madison or Tony. So Tierney, Saiz, Cash saw add up to about 10 points. The 5 midfielders had 43 points. Kane captaincy plus Lacazette was about 28 points. So if you fielded, for example, Madison, you got 81 points. If you fielded Tony instead, you got 73 points. I compared it to your team and my team. I had 58 points from 6, which is really, really good. I got really lucky here. And whereas I think you fielded 7 or 8 and ended up playing 6 and got 40 points. So basically, a free hit in 30 was a good indication of gaining 20 to 30 points as, I guess, average. So that's kind of the numerical value that I'm assuming that we need in a free hit later on.
Yeah, it does keep going to the home screen. This is happening for me as well. But I think it's a YouTube issue. I think we should just carry on.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so I hear you on the free hit. I would say, look, I mean, on the free hit 30, if we're looking back for a second, we play chips to plan these game weeks, and a lot of managers thought, look, it's fine. I think you can get through the week. It just happened to be the week where a lot of popular players like Rafinha, like Ramsdale, to a lesser extent Martinelli, Jimenez, they just basically happened to do nothing, and the free hit turned out to be great. Now, does that mean we should have all free hitted in 30? I still don't think so. Yep. I still think you have to think about the team more broadly. You have to think of the upside in the games. These games still were very hard to call, and this panned out, right? I mean, you couldn't have called Leeds to win. Maybe Arsenal was the only predictable game, but then it was just there were not many goals in it, and Villa could have turned up as well. So it's fine to look back and say those who free hitted did really well. And it's also fine to say that, they've got this 20, 30 points from the free hit, and that should be the benchmark of how people should look at when they play their free hit in the future. I think that's a good learning.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so now we have provided by Lego Mane, the great Lego Mane, a fixture review of the upcoming fixtures. And I know you listened intently to Planet FPL as well. So if you could sort of give us a breakdown of obviously nothing's been announced past 34 yet, but a breakdown of what we can predict. And I'm sure there's a lot of stuff on Twitter as well about fixture predictions and such. So, yeah.
Yeah, so basically 2 key events happened. One was obviously the FA Cup quarterfinals. More importantly, the draw for the FA Cup semi-final. So the draw for the FA Cup semi-final is actually very interesting in the sense that now we know that Chelsea will play Crystal Palace and Liverpool will play City. What that means is basically, so let's first talk about game week 35. What that means is that the Villa-Burnley double is possible in game week 35 and or 34. And I'll tell you why. It's because in game week 37, Crystal Palace were meant to play Villa. And if Crystal Palace made it to the final, that game would move to the midweek of game week 37. What it simply means is that midweek that Aston Villa would have had free in game week 37 is no longer free because it needs to be kept free in case Crystal Palace make it to the final. Now, they may not, but the people who are arranging these fixtures have to do this well in advance. So they can't wait and arrange it. So there's a real possibility that the Burnley game, which needed to be rescheduled, will basically fall into game week 34. It could be 35, but the only issue with 35 is that Villa would then play Burnley twice, and they may think that you want to spread it out a little bit. So 34-35, that's the first thing. People are predicting Villa and Burnley to double. The second interesting point coming from the FA Cup is the Chelsea doubles. Now, a lot of people were predicting that Chelsea will have a double in 36 and 37. Now, that I think is still the base case, but there's two very important things here. They have 3 games to reschedule and only 2 free midweeks, which is game week 36 and game week 37. So scenario number 1, they have Real Madrid in the Champions League quarterfinal. If they win the Champions League quarterfinal, then this situation remains the same. They only have 2 midweeks for 3 games to reschedule. What does that mean? They will obviously have a double in game week 36, but in game week 37, they will have 3 games in a week. Actually 4 games in a week. So, the old triple game week, but it's not a triple game week because it'll be the FA Cup final. So assuming Chelsea have reached the FA Cup final and they have won Real Madrid, they'll have the FA Cup final in game week 37, which is the weekend of game week 37. And then on Tuesday, they'll have 1 game. And then on Thursday, they'll have another game. So if Chelsea were to basically reach the FA Cup final, which we think they might, given that they have Palace and hopefully that's a game they can win, yet that's not a good double for Chelsea, right? Because they will essentially have not much to play for. Playing a game on Tuesday and Thursday pretty much means 2 different 11s. So that's one very interesting thing about this. And we think that if they're out of the Champions League, if they lose to Real Madrid, then this Leeds Chelsea game could actually take place in game week 35. So to summarize, Villa Burnley in 34-35. Leeds Chelsea could happen in 35 if they lose to Real Madrid. If they win against Real Madrid, they'll still have a double in 36 and 37, but that double in 37 will be terrible. And it will be one which will be rife with rotation. So anything to react on this before I go on?
No, go ahead. Keep going. And then I'll react to the Chelsea portion. Yeah.
Okay. So in essence, what that means for Burnley, by the way, for people who are considering any Burnley assets, it is true that they might have a double in 31, in 33, and in 34. It's true. And it's true that they may blank in all of them. So that's just something to keep in mind. Then let's come to City. City is the other interesting one. So City will pretty much definitely double in 36. And even if they reach the final or not, they will, basically because if they reach the final, that game will just move to the midweek. The main issue with City is the problem with they play West Ham in game week 37, and West Ham are still in the Europa League, and the Europa League final, as you see on this, is on the midweek of game week 37. So in a world where West Ham have reached the final of Europa League, and a lot of people will say, how's that possible? I think they play Barcelona in the semis if they make it to that. But again, people who have to plan for it can't take a chance that they will lose to Barcelona anyway. So if somebody was basically putting the games in now, they would probably try to make the Wolves City game in game week 37. What that means is that we could have a scenario where West Ham will play City in game week 37 because City are out of the FA Cup, Liverpool have beaten them, and they play Wolves in game week 37. What this means is you have a City double in game week 37 instead of game week 36. Now that's big. That's big because a lot of people look at free hit in 36 as the week where we can get all these City assets, triple up on them, and it makes sense. But then if City City double in game week 37, maybe a free hit in game week 37 would make more sense because you'd have a City double and some of the other teams may not have a double, like Liverpool won't have a double. So that's basically a very interesting one to watch out. The odds for the City double is still game week 36, but there is a chance it moves to game week 37. So these are basically the 3 moving pieces. There is no other postponement from FA Cup. If Liverpool reach the final, doesn't matter. Their game will just move to the midweek. And this is true for others as well. So there is no more FA Cup blanks as such that will come up. And there's no blanks at all after game week 33. I mean, there's a very remote scenario of a West Ham blank in game week 37, but ignore that. So what I wanted to say is this period of game week 34 to 37 is actually easier in my mind to navigate than the 26 to 30. Why? Because in game week 27, there's a major blank for a team like Liverpool that had a double in 36. So people had to actually get off them. There was another blank coming up in 30. So it made this period a lot trickier. When you don't have blanks, you go into this theory of even my single weeker will do fine. I don't really need to take him out for a doubler. So you could actually navigate it chipless. So, and my main summary of all of this is if you've got no free hit chip left, actually you don't have much to worry about. You may lose some upside, but it's not the end of the world. These fixtures can be navigated.
If you have no chips left, this is a question I'm throwing to you. And I think LR put out a good tweet about this as well. You'd start focusing on all your transfers leaning towards 36 and 37. Is that correct? Because even then, there's very limited time and transfers to get to that template 36 that a lot of wildcarders and bench boosters will probably have, right?
Yeah, look, I think in a funny way, game week 31, 32, 33, no matter what your strategy is, whether you have a wildcard left, whether you have a free hit left, everyone should be looking to add more City assets because we've lost all of them in the last few weeks. We should be looking to add a Chelsea defender or two. If you don't have Arsenal, get the third Arsenal. So I don't think it's chip determined at all in terms of what we need to do. Yeah. Now, it just turns out that these are the teams that also double in 36. These are also the teams that have something to play for. Maybe Chelsea, question mark, but definitely Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Spurs. These teams have a lot to play for for the run-in. So I don't think it makes much of a difference.
Yep, perfectly fair. I think one thing I'll add here, Pras, is that as we navigate this, latter end part of the season, it's also very important to sort of determine the teams that are playing for something, that are sort of iffy, and then also the teams that are on the beach, right? Because the motivation and the rotation and this and that should all be a factor, which sort of brings me to this theory and conclusion that you really have to play the fixtures now instead of like trying to identify a player so much, if you know what I mean. There's a vast amount of teams to pick from, and the picks are somewhat straightforward in many ways because we're missing these key players such as Cancelo and James and such and so forth. So quickly speaking, I sort of did a 4-tier breakdown, and if you could follow me on this, tier 1 for me is City and Liverpool, right? And they're both fighting for the title. So, and they're both, the two best teams in the league, and with high quality rotation substitutes. Chelsea is in that tier, but it's, as you mentioned, is very, very difficult to navigate because, they're third in the Premier League, 11 points behind. They do have one fixture in hand. How much does Tuchel want to fight for a top 3 spot? We don't know, but their top 4 is somewhat locked, right? So this one will be a very interesting way to navigate because I really don't know who the nailed assets are for Chelsea, especially let's say they beat Real Madrid and move on. It'll be very interesting. So that's sort of where I'm at with the top 3 teams, and then Tier 2 is the pack behind them that are chasing for European spots, Champions League, or the 5th and 6th spots, right? And usually the 5th place is guaranteed Europa League, and 6th domestic cup. It's very a lot of scenarios have to happen. But basically the pack behind is Arsenal, Spurs, United, and West Ham. And for me, those 4 teams are also in sort of a mini league of their own, fighting for that European spot. And they're all 6 points within each other. But the main thing I broke down from these guys are the fact that they all start to play each other, I think, from 33 onwards. So they're very short-term plays in some ways. They all have pretty decent fixtures leading up to 33. Tier 3 teams are, sort of the mid-table teams, and then Tier 4 is sort of the relegation battle teams. I'm assuming the bottom 6 for now, including Brentford, because the reason being is that tier 4 teams, which are the relegation battle teams, usually do not beat the tier 3 teams. So, for example, Brentford have only beaten Norwich and I think it was Everton recently. So I think that the reason I'm presenting this is the fact that we can consider sort of our main focus to be on getting those Chelsea, City, and Liverpool assets for now. But you could also consider supplementing it with those relegation battle teams, and maybe 1 or 2 key assets from there that actually have something to play for and more motivation to play for. So I'll try to do a proper breakdown on this, but to summarize my points, basically have as many tier 1 nailed players as possible. Pick a lot of matchups where it's sort of tier 2 teams versus tier 3, or tier 2 teams versus tier 4. Tier 2 being those fighting for the Champions League spots, and then tier 4 teams would be my sort of differentials over the tier 3 teams, even if they have single game weeks and such, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree. I think in tier 1, no disagreement. It's just where you go with City, right? And the other thing about tier 1, which is Liverpool, Chelsea, is they play each other on 32. Now, I don't get put off by Liverpool playing City at all. I'm happy to have Salah. Everyone will have, so that's not a problem. Or some I know have gone off Salah. Shout out to FPL Pig, and that's fine. But most will have Salah. And so if you have a Cancelo and a Robertson or a TA, I don't think that's an issue at all, because if there's goals, they'll be involved. If there's a clean sheet, they'll be in the bonus. So no issue with that. I think you can go up. The City midfielders is slightly trickier. You may want to hold off and see until game week 33. But we're not doing a team by team anyway.
Yeah.
Chelsea, I think they're just a dependable team. Defensively, they're dependable. Whether you want to go for the safety net of Rudiger versus James, TBD, but I think going there is not an issue at all. Even if they're on the beach, they're not a bad team if they have nothing to play for. And right now, by the way, until game week 34, 35, that's not the case. They still need to keep fighting. So that's that. In your tier 2, I just have to say, even being a United fan, I just think in tier 2, it's only Spurs and Arsenal. It saddens me to say that, but West Ham still have Europa League. They might compete for that. United are just not very good, I'm sorry to say. I mean, Liverpool, both Spurs under Conte and Arsenal are just very, very good teams now. And I think they're a tier above United. And we've been blessed, actually, the whole FPL community with the fixtures, how they fell with the double game week for Spurs, Arsenal, and Liverpool. It meant that our teams, the backbone of the team is actually very good, because the backbone of the team is Spurs, Arsenal, and Liverpool. And I think that's a great base to then add your Chelseas and Cities.
Exactly why a wildcard 31 is less appealing, because of we're so stacked up on great fixtures for this game week, especially. So
let's come to that in a second. So I just wanted to complete as well this. So Pranil on the chat is asking when we'll know the game week 36, 37. So we will definitely not know before game week 33. Because the semifinals are in game week 33. They might just hold off. We might get the game week 34 announcement, but for the big 36, 37, James from Planet FPL, he mentioned that it might be actually after the game week 33 deadline. Okay. So between game week 33 and 34, there is a chance it's even after game week 34. So that's where we are in terms of getting the full clarity for game week 36 and 37. But what we know from now, let me just quickly run down who we think will actually double in game week 36. So we know with some certainty. Now, the games that they have in the double may change, but we have some certainty that the teams that will double, there'll be 10. Arsenal, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, Tottenham, Palace, Everton, Leicester, Villa, West Ham. These are the teams that will double. So talking to your tier 1 and tier 2, you have tier 1 teams, Liverpool and City doubling. And their City's double could be actually Newcastle at home and West Ham or Wolves away. Liverpool's double is slightly harder. It's Tottenham at home and away to Villa. But again, Liverpool, I don't really see as an upside team, because most have Trent and Salah anyway. That's more of a hygiene team. I mean, if you want to go Robertson, you do, but Liverpool you'll have anyway. Chelsea have a good-looking double as well. People are hoping it'll be Wolves at home and Leicester at home. Defensively, I think that's a good fixture. Even attacking-wise, Leicester, not a bad shout. Wolves have been bad. So Chelsea could be an option for 36. Arsenal have a decent-looking double, Leeds at home and then Spurs away. And Spurs themselves actually have the worst double. This is, again, predictions, I must reiterate.
Yeah.
So Spurs will play Liverpool away and Arsenal at home. They're a decent team, and Conte is a good manager against harder teams. So you could make an argument that they're fine. But my issue is when you have options like City, Chelsea, Arsenal, Liverpool, maybe people will think that if I'm on a free hit in game week 36, then I don't really need a Kane away to Liverpool and home to Arsenal. Yeah. Maybe I don't need a Doherty. I don't need a Kulusevski or a Son. So Spurs could be a team that you can almost go out on a free hit if you were free hitting and then come back to, because around 36, 34, 35, 37, 38, Spurs' fixtures are mint.
Yep.
So that's something that stood out to me. Bench boosters, there's three teams that are interesting. So Palace are playing Watford and could play Everton away. Everton themselves could play Leicester away and Palace at home. And then Leicester will play Everton at home and Chelsea away. So Leicester's is not so great. But Palace, Everton could be teams to target on a bench boost. Arsenal obviously have some cheap assets as well. And then Villa, West Ham doubles at the moment. I think that will include Liverpool and City. So nothing to write home about on that one.
Mm-hmm.
That's game week 36. I have to keep saying this so that people don't get confused. This is just predictions. But there is a near certainty that these are the teams because they don't have a lot of slots.
Yeah.
36 is an empty game week that it'll have doubles. We just are not 100% which those teams are in the doubles.
Yep.
Then 37 for a second. Now, I talked about Chelsea's game with Leeds moving. So if the Chelsea's fixture with Leeds moves and they don't have a double, and even if they have a double, we're saying that it'll be a very cramped up double. So it's not great. So I'm not counting Chelsea as a great team for a 37 double. Some may disagree. That's fine. But I unless you're backing Crystal Palace to beat Chelsea in the FA Cup semi-final, I think a Chelsea double in 37 is terrible. So if you take them out, actually game week 37 is not the best double at all. We've been talking throughout on game week 37 could be interesting. We could look to free hit in that week. But what we've got left as it stands is Everton, who have a very good double, Brentford at home and Watford away. But are you really free hitting for them? You have Norwich, who'll have a double, Wolves away, Leicester away. Watford will have a double. We've all been there. They have Leicester and Everton. And you have Wolves, who'll have a double, which includes Man City and Norwich. And I think I forgot Leicester. Leicester have also a decent double with Watford away and Norwich at home. So my point is the only teams that will double, 36 and 37, are Everton and Leicester. The only teams that have an interesting double is Everton and Leicester. So do you really need to use a free hit in 37? People who are not free hitting in 36, 37 will have Everton, Leicester anyway. And for me, 37 is a lot less appealing than it was before this draw. If Chelsea had, for example, drawn Liverpool or City, you could have said, okay, Chelsea won't make it to the final. Right. So that double in 37 will actually be attractive because Chelsea will play on the weekend and they'll play on the midweek. But if they're in the final, they're playing Tuesday, Thursday. That's not great.
Yeah, I mean, to summarize, basically you're saying that a 37 double is not as appealing as we thought because Chelsea and Liverpool are not playing each other in the semifinals, correct?
Or City. So because we think Chelsea will make it to the final, suddenly they have no space. So either they will play game week 35 if they lose to Real Madrid, or if they win against Real Madrid, they have a really cramped up, bad double in 37.
Okay. Should we go to
that was on Lego Mane's masterpiece. And I did want to shout out also Johannes, the real namey on Twitter. So it's the real NIEMI. And he's done a prediction in terms of probability. So he's taken I had a chat with him separately as well. A lot of what I've mentioned in terms of the Chelsea doubling falling in 35, the chances of a City double in 37, he's put that into probabilities, and he's done a tweet earlier this morning. So I would recommend you check that out.
Okay, fantastic. And then now we have sort of a chart of the different chips left and the different chip strategies and options. And then we'll sort of deep dive into each, I guess, option one by one. So yeah, what do we have here, Pras?
So let's do it column by column. So this was prepared simply with all the requests that we got on people's, the popular chips left. So there's people who've got wildcard left, who've got a bench boost and a free hit. There's a big community who's got this left, and it worries me a lot. And I think you're one of those as well, right?
Yep.
So let's take it column by column. And for the listeners, the first column is this wildcard bench boost free hit. We're going to talk about what are the options, what are the teams to target within those options. The second column is free hit. You could have 1 or 2 free hits left. What are the windows to free hit, and what are the teams to target for that? If you only have your bench boost left, you recall at the beginning of the chips, top 10K chips, there's a lot of people who've played their wildcard but only have a hanging bench boost. We'll talk about that in our column 3. And then those people, we've not forgotten about you. If you have got no chips left, you really went for it in 26 to 30, and that's completely understandable. What do you do? So that's basically what this chart is doing. So the first one, wildcard bench boost free hit. Now, for me, there's 4 options, and there seems to be most people are going towards option 4. I'll come to that, but I'm questioning why not the others. So the first option is you wildcard now, which is game week 31. You bench boost in game week 33, and then you free hit in game week 36 or 37. And I'll tell you why this is appealing. This is appealing because I think the bench boost in 33 really deserves a strong consideration, because you have cheap assets like Newcastle, Southampton, with very good fixtures. Or Newcastle has good fixtures, Southampton decent. Whereas in game week 36 bench boost, and you will talk about this when we come to this, when we'll do a deep dive on this, you'll actually struggle to have a bench because there's not many strikers that you can target in game week 36. So if you're working off the premise that a bench boost 33 is attractive, why are people not looking at a wildcard 31 or wildcard 32 bench boost 33? Now, wildcard 32 is less popular because City will play Liverpool and people hate it to get a lot of players from a difficult fixture, and then their wildcard doesn't do well in that same game week, which is a weird thing. I do it as well. So I can understand not wildcarding in 32. So why not 31, bench boost 33, free hit 36? That's option number 1. Option number 2, if you're still really keen on a bench boost in 36, you could still look to wildcard in 31, you free hit in 33, and then you bench boost in 36. Or you don't have to free hit in 33, you keep your free hit for 37 or later. Again, what this is trying to do is, if your team is not where you want it to be, it has a lot of Wolves and Aston Villa, and you basically are going to suffer between now and game week 34, just play the wildcard, and you can still look to bench boost later or free hit in the middle. By the way, none of these are my favorite. I'm just trying to give all the options that people could have. The third one here is free hit 33. So you may be happy with your team. You may say that, I've got the right people. As you mentioned, Sonaldo, I've got the Spurs, Liverpool, Arsenal. I'll just wildcard in 34 and bench boost in 36. That's fine. But I would still say when you free hit could be 33, which is basically a week. And we'll talk about game week 33 in detail, by the way. You could free hit in 33 and wildcard in 34. Or the most popular, which most people are leaning towards, is you wildcard in 34, you bench boost in 36, and you free hit some other time. And in free hitting in 37, you hope to, basically get lucky with a good double, or you go for game week 38, which is basically a very wild game week with usually a lot of goals, and there's some good fixtures. So these are the 4 options. Before I move to teams to target for this strategy, what are your thoughts? Where are you with these chips?
One thing, I think another option that is maybe a minority, it would be to just bench boost in 33 and wildcard in 34, and then not bench boost in 36 and free hit somewhere else. I might have missed it here, but that's something that a lot of people are also considering. And the reason the reason being there is that, as you mentioned, Pras, for you, a bench boost in 33 is appealing. Personally, I still think a bench boost in 36 is more appealing, but if you think that a bench boost in 33 is appealing, one of the reasons is because that you have 1 or 2 of the key assets that we're going to work towards, namely being Cancelo or James might still be in your team. So if that's the case, yes, you can sort of, have maybe 2 or 3 transfers to get to a solid, and maybe take even more hits to get to a solid bench boost in 33, get that out of the way, and then focus on a wild card in 34, planning for the rest of the league, rest of the season. So I think that's another very interesting and viable option as well. Personally,
Just to react on that one, sorry to interrupt.
No
Just to
worries,
react on that one, the reason I didn't include a no wildcard bench boost 33 is the main issue is a lot of people have Villa, Wolves, and Leeds, and those are all blanking. So obviously you will not bench boost, and so you'll be basically taking a lot of hits unless you're well placed and you didn't actually go all in. Maybe you free hit it in game week 30. Yeah. So if you don't have a lot of Villa, Wolves, and Villa, Wolves, and Leeds or Rafinha, then you could look at 33 bench boost without playing the wildcard as well, for sure. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No worries. So personally, I am still leaning on a free hit 33 and wildcarding out of it in 34, namely for the reason that I don't want to keep those United assets and such moving forward. The wildcard 31, BB 33, and free hit 36 is interesting for me. I think it makes sense in the sense that you also have a longer period in terms of your wildcard being effective. It's hard to numerically and objectively quantify how much value that actually is, but you reckon that you'd rather have it for a little bit longer than the last 4 or 5 game weeks. Another appealing thing about a wildcard in 31 is the fact that anyways, we're going to work towards those main template assets because, as you mentioned, 26 to 30 was easier to navigate because in 27, what did we do? We got off the Liverpool assets and then we got right back on them. But in every single scenario here, all the heavy hitting teams will play in 36 anyway, so you just work towards that. And so why a bench boost in 36 is still appealing to me is that I think that most people, regardless of a free hit or a wild card, will have the core players, right? As in, let's say 3 Liverpool, maybe 2 Chelsea, 2 City, 3 City, and maybe a Spurs and Arsenal in there. So already the template is very heavy, even though we don't know what the actual template is. And so the differentiating factor for a BB in 36 is the fact that you can hopefully get 4 or 5 other doublers that, can make up those points. Granted, as you mentioned, when I started making some wildcard drafts for 34, it was actually very difficult to find the right bench boost that I actually felt confident in without going over budget. So lots of food for thought. I think this chart is really well organized, Pras. Kudos to you. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. We're going to do Game Week 36 dilemmas and Game Week 33 because honestly, the reason why, for the listeners, the reason why we did this video this week and, we were originally looking at it for next week is I'm completely confused on Game Week 33 free hit and Game Week 36 free hit. And we have a section on this. And so we'll talk about Game Week 36 in detail. But for bench boost, the other thing is, yes, you will build towards this team anyway. But Game Week 36 is the week where you have all the big teams doubling, right? So even though you're building towards it, how can you afford De Bruyne, Kane, or De Bruyne, Havertz, Salah, Cancelo, James, Trent, Robbo, and then also have a good bench? That's my main concern.
Yeah.
And so if I was going to free hit, I can basically have all these packed people. But let's park this because I get excited talking about the free hit options. But there's a whole section on that.
But Pras, I need to stop you here because the 36 free hit, regardless of whether you free hit or not, I think the question comes down to whether you keep Kane or not. The Kane price point is the really tricky part of a free hit wildcard or whatever it may be for 36 because you can't get to guys like KDB, Salah plus Kane, for example. So
you can't. No, I agree with you, and that will be a dilemma for you on wildcard as well. But
for sure.
Let's stick with column 1. So now in terms of teams to target, so let's assume let's go with the popular play. Let's assume people are thinking wildcard 31, my team is fine. Game week 32, most people's teams are actually not that great because again, Liverpool have the tough fixture, City have the tough fixture, Chelsea's is decent. I think Arsenal's is fine, but it's a week where there's not a lot of big gains to be made.
Right.
So people will just say, look, game week 34 works well. I can dead end my team to Game week 33, which basically means some could sell Kane to a Ronaldo. You could sell Son to Bruno. So it gives you that edge in game week 33 as well, where you don't have to use your free hit. So I get it. I think that will be the most popular strategy. So if you were to go with that, I would say the teams to target before game week 34 on transfers. I've just listed some, which is basically Arsenal. If you haven't got them, get them, because they have good fixtures now. They have the double in 33. Southampton actually a decent one because they play Leeds this week. And then they have the double. So you basically bench them for game week 32 where they play Chelsea. Newcastle are a decent one as well. So Newcastle are a team where, their stats are amazing. I mean, for me, they're a top 6 team now. So we need to stop thinking of them. And for that reason, I'm looking to bench Kulusevski and Doherty this week and play Kane. But they're a good team. So if you were to look to target a wild card in 34, I think going for Newcastle assets from next week, even this week maybe, who play Spurs away. Next week is Wolves at home, and then they have a double Leicester and Crystal Palace at home. Not a bad shout at all. So Newcastle could be a team to target.
Yeah, and by the way, they're in my tier 3 for sure. So yeah, good point there.
And they will be motivated, right? Because their owners are new. It's almost like a new manager bounce. They're still going through their new owner bounce. And Eddie Howe will want to make a strong finish so that they can have a real go at next season. I don't know what that go will be, how well they will do, but that's a team to target if you're wildcard 34. And then Burnley, Man United, 2 not great teams, but Burnley, look, they have a double this week. I'm personally looking at Weghorst. All those pained Jimenez owners who have or looking for a route. So I had a chat with Pranal earlier, and he was, you could go Jimenez to a Cancelo. I think that's a very viable route. But I also think a Weghorst move, if you can't afford a Cancelo or don't want to take a hit, is also fine, because the guy is basically getting a double. He plays Norwich in game week 32. He has a double and a possible double, like we mentioned, with Villa as well in game week 34. So an interesting team, but I wouldn't go taking hits for any Burnley or Man United assets unless you're looking to basically get them for the double in game week 33 and then wildcard out of it. So those are basically the thoughts on pre-wildcard. Post wildcard, I think this will be common theme for everyone. Post wildcard or not wildcard, the teams to target are Liverpool, City, Chelsea.
Right.
But for you bench boosters, I've also added Palace, Leicester, and Everton, because these are the 3 teams that will have the best fixtures in that 36 double.
Yep, exactly.
So that's one. This is going to be a long video. We're just on the first column. And by the way, we're now, after this slide, we're going to have a deep dive on what a wildcard in 31 for a bench boost in 33 looks like. What does a wildcard in 34 for a bench boost in 36 look like? So we will come to a deep dive on this first column. But let's, for the sake of completeness, go to free hit 1 and 2. The windows for free hit are quite obvious. It's free hit in 33, 36, or 37. You may argue that in 35, if Chelsea have leads and there are no other standout, 37 turns out to be really poor, some may actually go in 35 instead of 38. But as things stand, for me, it's 33 and 36. 37 maybe. And 37 maybe, I say, is that optionality of if Chelsea falls in, the City game falls in 37, then 37 really opens up.
Right.
So that's the free hit window. So guys, if you have 2, I think play it in 33, because 33 for me is a luxury free hit window, because they're good single game week players as well. And we'll come to game week 33 in detail, but play one in 33 and keep the optionality of the other one in 36, 37. And for those of you who are hating on people with 2 free hits, we're not going to talk about them anymore. So the ones with 1 free hit, you have a decision to make. I have a decision to make, whether it's 33 or 36. I'll give away a little bit of a spoiler. Right now, I'm leaning towards 36 more than 33, and I'll talk about my reasons for that.
Okay.
But because you're on a free hit, that does not mean that the teams to target change. Just because somebody is looking to free hit in 36, where Chelsea, City, Liverpool double, doesn't mean you don't target Chelsea, City, Liverpool, Arsenal.
Gotcha.
Because as we have said, these are the teams to target. They have something to play for. They have the good fixtures. It's perfect, actually. They are the teams that will get the points regardless of whether you're free hitting or not. So that's basically the advice for free hit. The next one is bench boost only. So these are the people. This is an interesting one, and you and I talked about it. If you're not loaded up on these Villa, Leeds, and Rafinha's, Villa, Rafinha, and Wolves, then go for bench boost 33. Get it out of the way. And if that means that you're taking hits for a Jimenez to a Wood or a couple of Wolves defenders to Newcastle. If you think your team is ready, go for bench boost 33. I don't think you have to wait for 36, because that will then open up the possibility for you to really target Chelsea, City, Liverpool, Arsenal after game week 33. So it is definitely an option. Don't rule out 33 for people who don't have a wild card. Game week 36, it will be the popular one because of the reasons that you've said, Sonaldo, that people will just say, look, so many teams are doubling. I have these players. I will definitely get to a place where I'll have around 13, 14 double game weekers. Fine. That's also okay. What you don't want to be doing is leading to game week 34, 35. Your transfers are Broha to, Mateta, instead of going, the high value transfers. That's basically your major risk of staying in bench boost 36, because without a wild card, you will have to be fixing your bench from now until game week 36 so that you have that perfect bench, because you will never let go and leave that transfer and go for, okay, maybe I'll go for Kulusevski to Havertz. You won't, because you'll say Kulusevski has a double. I'm fine with that. I won't go for the upside with Havertz. I'd rather fix my Broha to my, whoever doubles in game week 36. And that's the big trap with bench boost 36.
Yeah. It's I'm bummed that you gave away my guy and Mateta, because he's firmly in my plans for wildcard 34. Because Crystal Palace also have good fixtures surrounding their doubles, so very interesting. And I think this brings me to the question that I'll throw at you, and I know you're going to throw this at me eventually, is if you're wildcarding 34 and looking beyond, where are the strikers? I mean, there really is no strikers to go for. It's really, really difficult to pinpoint the right strikers. If you're bench boosting, especially in 36, you still need to field 3 strikers essentially, right? And so
you have to, exactly.
It's a very, very big dilemma actually that's causing me causing me trouble to formulate a good kind of a wild card. I do agree with you. If you can sort of get the bench boost out in 33, it is very appealing. I think before you answer, the reason why you're suggesting that you'll free hit in 36 is because, are you a little bit afraid that because this is such a big double game week with a lot of managers that's going to be loaded up on the tier 1, tier 2 teams, you might fall behind without free hitting in 36? Is that your reasoning?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I'll save my answer for the free hit section. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's an ideal week to free hit. That's the main issue.
Okay.
So when we come to free hit, we'll talk about it. There is no ideal week anymore. The way the fixtures have dropped. So had Liverpool lost to Forest, 33 would have been the game week to free hit. Had some other team not doubled in, a better team had doubled in 33, we would have free hit. For example, if Arsenal and Spurs game, so this was one that I was secretly hoping falls within game week 33. It didn't happen.
Yeah.
Had it happened, nobody would have free hit in game week 36. So then everyone would have gone to 36. None of this has happened. What it means is all of it is open. So you can basically calibrate your risk and reward appetite and go for 33 or 36. But let's come to the free hit discussion in a second. Andy Mack in the chat actually highlights a very important point, which I missed saying. For those with 2 free hits, you cannot free hit in 2 weeks consecutively.
Right.
So don't be hoping for 36, 37 as your 2 weeks to free hit. You cannot do that. So this is why I mentioned that you probably have to go for 33 and get some upside in game week 33 free hit. So that was the last thing I wanted to mention.
And if you have 2 free hits, always consider the other weeks as well. I know someone's mentioning 32, but even 38. I was listening to Zof, I think on Wire last week. He was mentioning how he was even considering a free hit in 37 or 38 as well for those with 2. So. You can really use it on any week, and all of this is really dependent on your team itself. Because, while someone might be pushing a wild card in 31, if you look at my team, it's just impossible to wild card out of it. It just doesn't make sense. So. This is very team dependent. Whereas one of my friends who has the same amount of chips as me is in the same position as me. I looked at his team and told him like, "Oh, you should wildcard in 31 no matter what." So it's very team dependent, I guess.
Absolutely. I mean, this is why we've shown the options. You have to decide what's best for your team. There is no secret formula that if you do this, you do well. It really depends. And it goes back to this old debate of, game week 26 wildcard, game week 28 wildcard. People whose team needed it did well.
Exactly.
And the people who didn't need to do it actually did well as well. And now they'll make their gains in the future. So it really depends on your team. Have a look. Are you happy with your team? If you're not, wildcard 31. If you are happy with it, look to dead end. If you think there is upside in 33, free hit. If not, then use your free hit later. So I think that's the strategy. And before we move on, Sonaldo, the last, not to leave behind our brothers with no chips. I think, look, you guys are out of the woods. I have to be honest, because people who have no chips left, there could have been many scenarios where this would have been terrible. For example,
exactly.
Had City doubled in Gameweek 33, I personally think that would have been a big week to free hit. You can argue you would have gone for some free hit, some City assets before anyway, but then you would not have had, the Chelseas. You would have not got some upside with other fixtures that you can target. I think now the way it's landed, you can pretty much sail through 33 without a free hit. You can sail through 36, 37. You will lose some upside. Free hit always has some upside, but it could have been a lot worse for people with no chips. So yeah, you're fine. Just, back the big teams. So the teams I've mentioned here are City, Liverpool, Chelsea. That's because they're tier 1 teams. And I'm assuming you already have your Arsenals and your Spurs because of the doubles, because of the game in the blank game week. So you're fine. And then if you want to sprinkle a little bit of tier 3, tier 4, the teams there are Everton and Leicester and Burnley in the short term. So one of the things to note is Burnley, actually, we tend to think of them as having a lot of doubles in games. After game week 35, they'll have nothing. No other doubles, even in 36 and 37. Assuming, obviously, the Villa-Burnley game happens in 35. So Burnley short term, Everton, Leicester long term, City, Liverpool, Chelsea as the priority. That's basically the summary.
And just to add, the no chips also, you're not too worried because, as you mentioned, you're pretty stacked up on, I would assume, Arsenal and Spurs, and both teams are fighting for a lot, and both teams are looking pretty decent so far. So, for certainly if you have no chips, it's not such a bad thing as everything has pointed out. And back to your point about 26 wildcard and how it ended up being very, very good for yourself and many managers. Again, I definitely considered it. I definitely thought about doing a wildcard in 26, but I just didn't have a poor team. I had such a borderline should I wildcard not type of team, and I thought holding made sense. So. Again, sometimes the wildcard sort of chooses you, and you don't really get to, find the right time to use it. So, very interesting. There's no one way to play it, no one right strategy, but just play your own game with every option in mind and assessing which option is best for your team and your situation, as we've mentioned multiple times. So, with that being said, let us move to the next slide. Already 50-minute mark. So, Pras, I know.
I think the next slide will be look. I work in a profession where you have to put things down on paper. So I have, we've talked about a lot of this, but the next slide is basically which window to wildcard, 31 to 34. So we have talked about this. What we've done is we've listed some of the pros and cons that you can think about. You can screenshot this as you're looking at your team. But for me, the pros of a game week 31 wildcard is basically you're maximizing use of the wildcard chip. There's a longer time to benefit. One of the things that I worry, and I have obviously played a late wildcard in the past, is you're not really leaving the runway to make the benefit of the wildcard chip itself. Now, if you get the Chelsea double, the Chelsea Leeds double in 35, you will get that as well, because you'll be able to attack the Chelsea game as well as then the bench boost in 36. So you'll be fine. But I think 31 just gives you a more runway to benefit from the wildcard chip. You can basically now fill your team with the Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs mixed with Everton, basically all the teams we talked about to target, and you're fine for the rest of the season. So there is no major issues that you have to, again, it comes back to no material blanks make planning a lot easier. You don't have to skip out of Liverpool because of their blank. You don't have to skip out of Chelsea or City. You just get these guys who are the most relevant for the rest of the season, and that helps you as well. You take out all your rubbish from Wolves, Leeds, and Villa, and that's basically the big pros of wildcard 31. The cons are you'll have to basically either commit to a bench boost in 33 if you have one, or you'll have to go for this long game of game week 36. And the last, I think the issue is, actually the couple of issues with wildcard 31 is teams are well set up already. So like you mentioned, Sonaldo, your team looks fine. Why would you want to wildcard? Because Arsenal and Spurs have good fixtures. That's something to consider. Do you really need to wildcard? And the last one is, if you wildcard it now, you'll probably have to overload on City and Liverpool. As I mentioned, it's fine. I don't think there's an issue at all to have 3, even 4 players from that game. But you may choose to basically sidestep that and wait and go big on these 2 teams after game week 32. So that's basically the pros and cons of a wildcard 34 or a 35.
Just to add to your points about 31, I just want to say that I think the big keyword for a wildcard in 31, as you mentioned, is more long term, but also I like the idea of it being quite flexible and having some flexibility. And I'll try to explain why, because there's a vast amount of teams we can pick from right now. And so it's unlikely that you're going to triple up on one team. Maybe the caveat is Liverpool. I mean, I guess you could triple up on City as well, but
Pranal is mentioning that City's favorite opponent is Burnley, which is very true. So you triple up on their best festive fixture for the season. But generally I agree.
Yeah. So regardless, you could triple up on both or have a double and a triple in Liverpool, for example. And so basically you're covering your core players anyway, right? You're getting Liverpool, City, probably 1 or 2 Chelsea in there. You got your Spurs, you got your Arsenal. So even if you don't bench boost in 33, that team's already very solid for 33. And then plus, whether you're free hitting at 36 or bench boosting at 36, you already have the core in there. So what I really like about a wildcard in 31 also is the fact that since we're so heavy on the Chelsea, Liverpool, City assets, all the price points are very similar. So you could sort of kind of bounce around those main price points. I think the main con, as you mentioned, is the fact that you don't have enough luxury transfers to navigate around 36, 37, where it's going to be trickier to move more assets because, for example, James might not be playing, and you might have to move off him to get another Chelsea asset, for example. So as much as it is a long-term play, I think there's also dangers in it. However, the biggest thing for a pro is the fact that it is quite a flexible wildcard than we thought previously because of the way the fixtures have turned out to be moving forward. Yep.
Fair. Yep. And then 34, 35, I think we've talked about this. You can dead end your team. It's closer to the 36 bench boost. And as I mentioned, this Leeds Chelsea double. If it happens in 35, then you can really attack that as well. Maybe even go triple Chelsea and then move off one in 36. So that gives you that advantage that, for example, I had in wildcard 26. I could really attack 26 despite losing out on the Salah triple captaincy. But that basically gives you an edge of using a wildcard. So in terms of the cons for wildcard 34, 35, I've already mentioned it as part of the other one. I don't, in game week 26 and game week 28, people who wildcarded benefited that week and had a real jump from just the wildcard. Yeah. I mean, I, for example, got the same points in game week 26 as people who triple captain Salah. That basically gives you a very concrete idea of the upside of the wildcard itself. Now, I don't think people in game week 34, 35 will have that upside of the wildcard. You're obviously hoping that the bench boost will be so good that upside will come in that bench boost week itself. And don't get me wrong, I have done this strategy pretty much every year, apart from this year and the year past, because of COVID, because of postponements. So that basically dilutes it a little bit, but I think it's worth it to have this exceptional bench boost, which sometimes we've all had. Those who've played the game remember the bench boosts that scored 170, 180 points. That's very possible. So,
it's a very traditional play from what I know. And another key factor that we might be underrating is the fact that a late wildcard in 34 also helps you really, really identify, hopefully, the key assets from the key teams. Whereas right now you're sort of, we don't even know if James is going to be back right now, right? And so it's a lot of... you can attack the main teams, but we also don't know who to actually go for. Plus, we'll have a better visual of, for example, if Chelsea get knocked out of the Champions League and all those external factors that need to be considered. And another big thing about a wildcard in 34 that I struggle with is the Kane issue, because as you mentioned, Pras, we're lacking strikers. And while Kane's double in 36 is not great because of the fact that they play Arsenal and Liverpool, and you don't want to kind of hedge I don't think you want to hedge your bench boost. Granted, it is Kane. However, his fixtures around 36, and the at that point in time, Spurs might be playing legitimately for a top 4 spots, or they're fighting for it, is going to be another tricky thing to navigate. So, for example, you wildcard in Kane in 34, keep your transfer, and downgrade him to, I don't know, maybe a Lacazette or someone in 36, and upgrade some other place to bench boost, and then you try to hop back on Kane for the last 2. But that is a issue that I've faced with these drafts. So a lot of things to consider, and again, it's good to put everything into perspective now, but we really don't know the actuality of how 34 and 36 bench boost will work out until we get to that point in time. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's go to the deep dive on
sure.
wildcard. Sorry.
No, let's do that because I can say that later. Yeah.
Okay. So this is just what we wanted to do is, this is not we've literally spent 15 minutes doing the draft. So I would not take this as this is the best draft that you can make. But what we wanted to do is look at, if you were to look at bench boost in 33, what is the kind of wildcard that you can have now? And, this is not about individual players. This is almost about the bench. And for the listeners, this team is basically Ramsdale and Dubravka in goal. So you have a very nice Dubravka who will have a good double in 33. You have Rudiger, who can be James. You have Schär, TAA can be Robertson, Cancelo, and White. Now, the reason here, Schär and White, again, very cheap, great for the bench boost in game week 33. In midfield, you have Saka, Mount, Barnes, Salah, Kulusevski, all with good fixtures. Saka with the double, Barnes with the double, Mount a longer term hold. Now, people may go Havertz if they have more money. They may want to come down to somebody else. That's fine. Again, we're not talking about individual players. And then you have Kane. You have, as Pranil has seen it, you have Wood, and you have Weghorst. And the idea here is both Wood and Weghorst are decent attackers in a decent double.
Right.
And so we're not going to debate individual players here. We're trying to give people an idea that if you were to look at a bench boost in game week 33, it's not too bad. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, it's not too bad. I mean, you're covering the bases. You have your Cancelo in there. You have your Mount. You have your decent single game week players. I think that I would possibly not put so many singular. I don't know, because it is a wild card. It's different, but
yeah,
that's true.
I mean, we don't have to debate each player. It's more about the bench. It's more about, do you think bench boosting with, let's see, who are the singles here? So
Kane, Kulusevski.
Yeah, Kulusevski, I think, would be on the bench in a typical week.
Mm-hmm.
Kane would move to Ronaldo, I think, in game week 33 in this setup. Who's your bench guy? Rudiger. So Rudiger, Kulusevski, Cancelo, right? Or you wouldn't bench Cancelo. Maybe Mount. So you have 2 Chelsea players and a Spurs player in a, we can debate it, but you have basically a team of lots of doublers and a decent bench. You have Dubravka and Ramsdale both as doublers. I think it's okay. I think it's well worth a look. This is not a template for people to look at and say this is what we should go for. It's just an idea. And what is interesting is now if you go to your draft, so what we did is because Sonaldo has to think about this wildcard 34, I basically said go and do one and try to do one with Kane and without Kane and see where you get at. And can you really solve this dilemma of the striker issue?
So again, the caveat being I spent not too much time on it. So I mean, decent amount of time, but not enough of the week that I'll actually wildcard, where I'll probably spend maybe 40 hours on it. So jokes, of course. But so basically the main point I, again, want to make is a wildcard with Kane and without Kane, and how different the team becomes with Kane and without Kane. I like the idea of just going early and tripling up on Liverpool in 34. So I have Matip in the first draft, as he's probably a very decent third option for Liverpool at his price point. I really want Havertz in there. I do believe in his potential and ability, and I think he rotation risk is the scary part, but if I'm going to punt on a Chelsea midfielder or attacker, I think it's going to be Havertz. I'd rather have James than Rudiger for now, just because of the upside. But again, the Cancelo Foden thing, Foden could be a KDB, and a 34 wildcard allows me to sort of identify the third city asset that I want to go for. The fillers here would be sort of Palace, Everton, and I guess Arsenal as well. I really like the look of Mateta. I think he's going to be in there no matter what. I was thinking about.
I mean, no matter what is a little strong, but I do hear a lot of. I mean, they still have Edward, they still have Benteke. I mean, it'll be tight, but I do agree he's standing out to me as well as somebody who looks like a budget option. Yeah. I mean, if only Olise was a striker, right? Then he looks very good as well. But midfield, it's just you just don't have spots for good players. That's the issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll go through it for the listeners, by the way. I like the idea of Ramsdale plus Keita because Keita has a very good double in 36, and then Ramsdale sort of not so great in 36, but you can work around it the opposite. So Keita has very good fixtures all around. I like my defense in having Cancelo, James, Ben White as my cheapest option, Matip and Trent. In the non-Kane draft, I can get Robertson instead of Matip as well. And by the way, shout out to LR for pointing out how good Ben White has been all season at 4.5 million. I think he's had 13 clean sheets, so a very, very underrated asset as well. Foden seems to be a sort of a no-brainer option for me, unless you can have a price point to get to the Mahrez and Sterling and KDB options. But Salah in there, Saka has to be in there for me. Havertz is my Chelsea asset, and then Gordon or Ramsey as my fifth midfielder. And then up top is the really tricky part. So Kane, Lacazette, Richarlison, Mateta, Watkins could be an option. So Dennis,
DCL could be an option, actually.
DCL, hopefully, yeah. Dennis is there as well. So, so it's difficult. There's no real striker to go for. Ideally, I think if your starting 11 should be a 4-5-1 or a 4-4-2 at max. So yeah.
I think this is where I thought wildcards will go. Which is premium defense and double, basically a Chelsea and a City mid, and I think it's the midfield where a lot of non-wildcarders will struggle, because I think people are moving towards a more premium backline with people going for Cancelo now, probably a Chelsea defender next week. They already have the Arsenal White or Tierney. TA is already in the team, so I think where you differentiate with the wildcard is Foden, Havertz, to the extent people don't have them. Again, people will have Salah, Saka, and Kane. So I'm looking at your Kane draft. Of course, if it's a non-Kane draft, my main concern with the non-Kane draft is that Spurs' fixtures are around 36. So they play Leicester at home, game week 35, Burnley at home, game week 37, Norwich away, game week 38.
Exactly. Yeah.
You cannot not have Kane for those three games. And this comes back to my inclination of a free hit where I can just get Kane out for game week 36, turn him into a De Bruyne. And for me, that in itself may be enough upside. But again, very early days. It's something to consider, whether how heavy you go on Spurs, given that their double may not be the best. You may just have to. You may just have to keep Kane for that bench boost, because you may not have the transfers to shift him out. But other than that, so let's look at your bench. So if I'm looking at your Kane draft, your bench will be Guaita, which is very good. I mean, he'll have an excellent double. One of White, again, solid defense, good player. Gordon, okay, not terrible, but he plays twice.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Villa will have a double as well. So could be Ramsey. And then it's the striker, right? Mateta, if he keeps his place, or I think it'll be that cheaper striker, whoever that is.
Yeah,
that's not bad. I think you're having 30 games out of this team on your bench boost, and that looks great. And then you still have the core of, you have 2 City here, 2 Chelsea, 3 Liverpool, and 3 Arsenal. Yeah. That's a good core.
A couple things I need to make sure that the viewers are showing is that my value is decent, but not amazing, not bad. It's very decent. So the first draft with Kane is 0.7 short. So I know I'm cheating here, but it's just because I've really, really struggled to figure out where to move the money here. So
Just go stones for Cancelo so I can beat you in game week 36.
But I really like how you sort of mentioned all the points, because I want to put it together and basically say this, right? A wildcard in 34 is appealing. Again, these are made for the bench boost in 36. So some people might not even be considering a bench boost in 36. But the wildcard in 34 is appealing because we'll have more information. We'll know what players to sort of go for from the tier 1 team, tier 2 teams. And then you surround it with the Gordons, the Whites, and the Crystal Palace player, the cheaper options that people without a wild card will have no time to mess around with, because they're so heavily invested in going for Rudiger, Cancelo, and another keeper, for example. So that is the main benefit I see of holding. Plus, on top of that, I do have a very decent team for 31 and 32. The upside is not that great. So if free hit in 33 out of the United and those and have 11 or 9 or 10 very good doublers, and then getting into a 34 wildcard seems to make sense to me so far. Yep.
Matthew Price flexing his team value of 107.4. Well done, Matthew.
Amazing.
All right, let's go to free hit. I think we've done wildcard. Obviously, this caveat doesn't need to be said, but I should anyway, that wildcard 34 is going to change. It'll depend on what doubles actually land. So Kamzi, I saw in the chat, made a point that we don't know yet if that upside from the wildcard will exist, because there could be some doubles that drop into 34, 35 that give you that upside that non-wildcarders won't have. So I completely agree with that. That could happen. So wildcard 34, this was basically just an exercise. We're in international break, looking into the future, how things may look. We all know the only thing that is certain is that this won't happen, and something will come up and things will change. So let's go to free hit now. On the free hit, now this has been my main issue, and the thing that is keeping me very occupied during this international break is, when do we free hit? Game week 33 versus game week 36 or 37. Now, I will start by saying that there is no right week. There is no ideal week. If there was, there won't be a slide needed. I think both are fine. I think both have some upside. For me, game week 33 has a risk, and game week 36 has limited upside. That's what we're debating. Do we take the risk of backing against some popular assets and going for the doublers, or do we take game week 36, which is a week where we'll have 6 or 7 of these players anyway? So is it worth really free hitting for the 4 additional Chelsea City players? TBD. So that's basically the main dilemma here. So the pros for game week 36, the teams that are doubling in 33 are unpopular teams, are teams that don't have good fixtures around that week. I mean, some have good fixtures leading up. Like we said, Man United are fine, Newcastle are fine, but they're not really teams you want for the future. So number one, if you're not free hitting in game week 33, please don't load up your team taking hits for game week 33 for teams like Newcastle, Man United. Now, I know I mentioned that Newcastle are looking very, very good, but just so people are aware, Newcastle after the double, basically they are playing, where do I see Newcastle's fixtures? They're playing Norwich away, so 34 is fine. Then they play Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal. So not the team that you want to hold over this very busy 36, 37 and the period where you want the doublers.
35 starts with the Liverpool, by the way, just to clarify.
Correct.
Yep.
So you don't want to have these players, so might as well just free hit and get them on that game week 33. So that's a big pro for game week 33. The other one is the teams that we're currently loaded up on, which is Spurs, Liverpool. They don't double. And the teams that we're also loaded up on, which is Leeds, Wolves, and Villa, they have a blank. So you could, again, you don't have to be rushed into taking these guys out. I mean, certainly don't take out Spurs and Liverpool, but taking out Leeds, Wolves, and Villa, you basically just free hit, and then you take your time as you build towards game week 36. So that for me is the big pro, or the 2 big pros of game week 33. The big con, and for me this is almost a deal breaker, is that the single game weeks are so good.
Yeah.
I mean, City is playing Brighton at home. Spurs are also playing Brighton at home. I mean, these 2 games are very high upside games. So if you have a Cancelo, if you have a Kane, if you have a Son, even a Doherty, Kulusevski, any other City player, you definitely want to play them over any Newcastle or Man United player. I mean, at least that's my thinking. Then you look at Liverpool. They play Man United. It's again a home game. We all remember game week 9 when Liverpool last played Man United, especially those who backed against Salah in that week.
That was me.
So it was a 5-0. And now I'm not suggesting it's going to be 5-0 again, but you're not going to back against, or you'll be taking a massive risk backing against Salah and Trent.
So scary.
So exactly. And then lastly, Chelsea's game against Arsenal, that's an away game. Not great, but I have James in my team. I'm not dropping James, even if it's versus Arsenal, for Schär or for Varane. I mean, I'm just not going to do that. So that's my main con with this game week 33, that the single game weekers that we already own are fine. So why I call game week 33 as a high risk game week is basically you could do really well like game week 30, and things may just happen where Man United eke out a 1-0 win against Liverpool. You're laughing because you've already got 3 Man United assets. You're loaded up on Newcastle, who have a good double. But then what if it's not the case? What if Liverpool do well? What if James scores a 15-pointer against Arsenal? What if, as expected, City and Spurs batter Brighton? Then you're in the territory where the free hit can actually be lower than the average. Now, not to scare anyone, but I'm trying to say is this is a high risk and a high reward type of week.
I think
you can go for a free hit.
I think with the high risk, high reward theory here in game week 33, again, if you have 2 free hits, then it's a no-brainer. You play it in 33. But if you're considering a wildcard or not free hit in 33, this is a question to you, Pras. How do you find the right balance between fielding the right amount of single game weekers plus the right amount of double game weekers? For example, I saw you're continuously mentioning Cancelo, Salah, and Kane and Doherty and such, which is already in itself so many single game weekers. I saw a draft that our friend Baker just made, and he just had, for example, Son plus Kane and 9 doublers. So it's a difficult assessment, right? And are you looking, if you're as a pragmatic manager? Sorry if I'm being rude and calling you in
pragmatic
a category.
Template FC.
Okay, so as a pragmatic type manager, how do you assess this? Is there a way to assess it, or is it just kind of?
There's no right answer, to be honest. It's risk appetite. Whether you want to play EO, whether you want to play against EO, whether you want to back a certain team. It'll also come down to what lineup or what rotation happens the game week before. So there's a lot of factors here that come into it. I mean, after this, I've got a draft free hit 33 that we can talk about. And in that, I can mention some of the players that I thought if I was to free hit that I will look at, again, with the caveat that this can obviously change when you're in game week 33. So why don't I complete the table and then we come to the draft itself to make my point. So the last point I wanted to make in game week 33 is there is an option value of saving the free hit. And this is the option value of time, of uncertainty. So assuming, because I'm saying by game week 33 deadline, we will not have any information on game week 36 and 37, losing the option value of what happens if City actually get the double in 37? What happens if Chelsea are on the beach and actually most people who've got Chelsea assets will not want them in game week 36? You'd rather spend your money on other teams that are looking very good. That option value is also worth something. So for me, that game week 33, that for me is a little bit of a con, where I'm thinking if I can navigate game week 33 without a problem, why should I use it and give up this option of really chasing the upside in a week where I really need it? Now, it may be that it's nothing, but it could be something. So that option value is something that I value as a particular con for game week 33. If you come to game week 36, and I keep saying game week 37 as well, but for me, game week 37 is only an option if City have a double in that week, or if somehow Chelsea drop out of the FA Cup and they lose to Crystal Palace. If either of those scenarios happen, then free hit 37 could be interesting. But absent that, for me, that's not an interesting game week. So game week 36, I'm basically getting the best 11 players from the best 4 teams. So sorry, any Man United, any Spurs fans. For me, the best 4 teams in the league right now are City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal. And they also have the best doubles, or very, very good doubles. So you can back these 4 teams to win both the games in that game week 36. And that's what I will get if I will free hit in game week 36. I will go triple City, triple Liverpool, triple Chelsea, double Arsenal. And I'll show a free hit team that I've made that tries to get to that. And that for me is upside enough. Now, if I can get to 7 of those players, that will be the argument against. And this is a con that I've listed here. You can get to 6 or 7 of these players anyway. But what happens if on the night of Game Week 36, we get a similar Rafinha-esque rumor that one of the players is out? Or what if somebody's suspended? That's basically, you don't have to build up to it. Why build up to that week when you can actually hit it and really attack it? Because if you were to predict which game week is going to have 150 to 200 points, like game week 29, like game week 28, this is the week. So I want to, and it's also a little defensive, by the way. This free hit is also defensive in the sense of people are bench boosting that week. I want to basically keep up, and I want to make sure that I also get that 150 score. Exactly. So I'm going to go for it. I'm also being defensive in the sense that what if I'm not sure about any particular team? Do I really want to be in a weak position going into game week 36 when I know that this is the week where if you have a bad game week 36, that could be worth 30 to 40 points. Yeah, I had a bad game week 30.
Yeah.
I lost 10 points. You have a bad game week 36, you're basically dropping from 5K to 25K. Yeah. That's bad. So again, it's a bit defensive.
Again, which is why I'm appealing to for those with the bench boost and wildcard, a bench boost in 36 is this appealing because yes, it was hard to identify those 4 external, bench members as we had White, Gordon in there. But with that being said, you're already free hitting in 36 to get those template core for best team players, and you're going to already have that. So the differentiating factor is that on top of all those right picks, you're also going to have a pretty advantage in I guess eight extra game weeks or 8 extra games. I'm assuming. Yeah.
Yeah, but when you'll see my free hit draft, it'll look different from your wildcard draft, and I'll tell you that because I don't need to save money on the bench. Gotcha. I'll have De Bruyne, I'll have Havertz, I'll have it's a team that looks basically tailor-made for game week 36. Now, again, I keep mentioning this. It may change. Somebody may be injured, suspended. But as of now, I really like that team. So why don't we go to it then? Why don't we go to the free hit draft that we've made for game week 33 first? And then let's compare it to the free hit draft for 36.
Okay. We have the free hit 33 draft up here right now.
Okay. So again, with the caveat of 15 minutes, we are not, either of us are looking to free hit. So now in game week 33, I've gone with De Gea in goal. You have Lewis, who's basically a 3.9 non-playing goalkeeper. You can have a non-playing goalkeeper because of a doubler. I mean, De Gea, even if he surprisingly misses out one game, he won't miss out both. So no money needed for your second goalkeeper. And De Gea is basically there for save points against Liverpool and the Norwich game, which is at home, which you back for a clean sheet. So I think he would be the go-to keeper on a free hit. You then have Cancelo as the single game weaker. And then I've gone for White. I think he would be popular because of the fact that, I don't have Ramsdale here. Arsenal are a good defense. They have a double. And then I've gone for a couple of guys from Newcastle, Target and Schär, whether you play both of them, TBD. And then, Castagna. So you can decide one of them or two of them would be on the bench, but you can go for a Leicester defender. You can go for a couple of Newcastle defenders. In midfield, you have Saka. I still have Salah. Some people could go for De Bruyne, also a single game weaker, and you may argue that De Bruyne has a better single game week than Salah, TBD. But I think Saka would be in pretty much all teams, and I think for me, as I think about it, probably my captain as well in game week 33. Then you have Barnes and Maddison, the popular duo, which will be who did well in game week 30. I think their double is decent, and so worth going for them. In attack, you have Bruno and Ronaldo. So Bruno in midfield and Ronaldo up front as the two guys, and you're basically banking on them to do the business against Norwich and maybe get a goal against Liverpool. So that's your upside with that. You really go for, if United do the business 4-5-0 against Norwich, this free hit is definitely worth it. And then up top, you have Weghorst and Wood. Again, the two guys who I also had on the game week 31 wildcard. I think these are the two go-to strikers if you wanted to attack game week 33. You could bench one of them. I mean, if you're not convinced with Weghorst, bench him. Bench him, maybe Schär, and one other guy, maybe Castagna. But basically, this would be the essence of a free hit 33. What do you think about this?
Yeah, it's interesting how this free hit draft is sort of a reflection of how you assess your teams and your strategies just in general, because of the fact that you're missing the Spurs players or don't have a single Spurs players, whereas you have the singlers in Cancelo and Salah, for example, because you just value them as just much better teams than Tottenham. Correct?
Yeah. And Baker is obviously the opposite. He's got Kane and Son, which is fair. I mean, you have to go for it on a free hit, what you feel. Yeah. And this isn't the only free hit. But my point is, you can already see people making free hit drafts with different single game week players. That means there are different single game week players that merit a place in a free hit draft, which basically means if I own a Kane, a Salah, a Cancelo, I'm not that inclined to free hit. But this is as it stands. I think the good thing about free hit 33 is you don't actually have to plan for it. You can still this week go for Cancelo, maybe Weghorst, and you may still decide not to free hit in game week 33. So, or you may still decide to free hit if things basically leading up to game week 33, a couple of players are injured and you think I'm not there yet. There is still upside. Go for free hit in 33. I think that option can still remain.
Yeah, I like the point you made at the very end, because regardless of whether you free hit in 33 or 36, regardless of whether you free hit in 33, especially if you're lacking some chips, you should really focus on getting the assets you want for the 36 big double coming up. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then back to my point on who are you backing against? As you mentioned, here is Ronaldo. You're backing against Kane. Mm-hmm. Here is Fernandes. You're backing against a Son. Now, not everyone has Son and Kane, but maybe instead of Bruno, some may have Martinelli, some may have a second Arsenal mid or a Lacazette. So that's you're backing them against a third Arsenal player. You've got Target and Castagna. By the way, in the chat, I know Castagna won't score worldies every week. This is just a placeholder for a Leicester defender. Are you backing a Castagna and a Target against Trent or a Robbo or a Robbo? I'm not. Are you backing a White and De Gea versus a Ramsdale and James? I am not. That's basically why I'm not keen. I don't love it. Now, I still say I'm keeping my options open because my transfers will be probably Cancelo and Weghorst, but my options are open. If leading up to 33, I feel that's the right week, that's the week I'll go for.
Yeah. Before we go to free hit 36, the last thing I'll mention is I really like the fact that you have 3 Newcastle players in there. I think Newcastle, again, is a tier 3 team. They played 2 home games versus Leicester and Crystal Palace in 33. And I think they're going to just, regardless of what they're fighting for, because for me, they're out of the relegation battle. They just need one more win, right? And they're out of the relegation battle. But they're a team that's revived and sort of they're gonna play till the end, no matter what, in my opinion. So good shout there and good differentials there as well. So yeah.
So that's on 33. I mean, like I said, most of the people who are not on free hit, I think we'll have Saka, an Arsenal defender, Salah, maybe Weghorst, maybe a Leicester mid, maybe Cancelo. So and maybe even a Newcastle defender in Dubravka. A lot of people have him as their second keeper. So there are about 6 or 7 of this core that are already in other people's team. And then you're adding to the fact that you're backing against the Canes that are in the single game week or the non-free hitters teams or the Trent or the Robbos. That's basically my last point on game week 33. So there is upside, but there is risk.
Yep. Perfect.
Game week 36. So before people shout at my team value, yes, I can afford this team. Maybe you can't. And we will come to what you can do if you can't afford this team. I have gone for Mendy in goal, a non-playing 3.9 goalkeeper. I've gone for James, so basically a double Chelsea defense. Cancelo, Robertson, Trent, and Stones. So I have a double Liverpool defense, a double Chelsea defense, and a double City defense, the 3 best defensive teams in the league. Mm-hmm. Then I have Saka, De Bruyne, Havertz, Salah as my 4 in midfield. I have a non-playing 4.4 midfielder. I've gone for Lacazette, Gelhardt, and non-playing Gelhardt and Scarlett. So basically this is a 5-4-1, and this is triple City with Cancelo, Stones, and De Bruyne, triple Chelsea with James, Mendy, and Havertz, and this is triple Arsenal or double Arsenal with Saka and Lacazette, and triple Liverpool obviously with Salah, Robertson, and Trent. Now, You don't have to have Lacazette. I think he's the one that you bring down if you can't afford this team. And that actually doesn't change anything, because what I'm trying to say here is this game week 36 team will, and you change, right? If De Bruyne is not looking good or injured, you change him to a Mahrez. If Havertz is not firing, then you change him to a Mount. What I'm trying to say is there is opportunity here in game week 36 to really attack the best three teams with the best double. And even you bench boosters won't have this team. You won't have De Bruyne in your team, I can guarantee you.
Impossible. Yeah.
You won't have a 5 at the back with Stones, because you'll have to have a cheap defender or maybe 2 cheap defenders. And you will have to be playing 2 strikers where I don't play anyone. I play Lacazette, and even that I'm forced to play. So what do you think?
I think it's amazing. I think it's as a probably a non-free hitter in 36. This is an amazing team. I mean, you have all the heavy hitters; they all double, and you're covering your bases, and you got some differentials in there. I think maybe Havertz becomes a differential in some ways. De Bruyne for certainly will be. So yeah, I think it's really, really nice. And I agree with you here that this free hit is way more appealing than the free hit in 33 because of the risk reward profile that you mentioned, and much more predictable. That look, maybe you don't gain as much, but at least certainly you won't lose. And I'd be positive that this ends up being more beneficial than a red arrow, for example. Yeah.
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Game week 36 will have lower upside because a lot of people will have 6 to 7 of these players, but it will have no or very limited downside, because who are you? Going back to 33, you were backing against Kane, you were backing against Son, you were backing against Trent and Robertson. Here, who are you backing against? Spurs. Spurs is double, is Liverpool away and Arsenal at home. Yes, they could do well, but I'm happy to have a De Bruyne over Kane.
Yeah.
Who are you backing against? Leicester and Everton players. I mean, come on. I mean, I'd rather have Havertz and Stones over any Everton or Leicester player. So that was basically the thinking with this free hit 36 draft. Back to you as a question. So if you can't free hit in 36 because you have to bench boost, when will you free hit?
33.
So you wouldn't dead end. You wouldn't dead end to 34. You would take the option of free hitting.
Because my team situation makes it very difficult to dead end into 33. Because So it's interesting, right? I saved 2 free transfers, and I'll explain why my situation is different from other people, regardless of the players itself. It's because I have Son and Kane in my team, which means I have basically 0.0 in the bank. And I have 2 expensive keepers in De Gea plus Ramsdale. So I have very, very difficult price points to move around. Surgery is needed if, for example, if I want to bring in a Cancelo plus James, it'll be maybe 3 or 4 transfers, even with 2 free transfers. So I think that I'll be lacking a lot of players that I want by the time 33 comes around if I don't free hit. So I also feel like I don't want to overthink this too much. As we mentioned earlier and throughout the episode, Pras, 37 is not that appealing because the main doublers are Everton and Leicester, I believe, right? That have decent upside. But again, very hard to predict those two teams. And maybe City falling into 37 changes things, but the likelihood of that is very, very slim. Free hitting in 38 doesn't make sense for me if I'm wildcarding in 34, because I'm going to be thinking about all 4 or 5 game weeks remaining and structuring my 34 wildcard in order to move around the players that I need in the next 2 transfers to get to a 36. So I think I'm just running out of options and weeks to play it, and so why not just play it in 33, have a little fun. Get some core players in there and really try to chase a little bit of upside in 33 because I know for a fact that I think I'll be pretty solid in my 34 onwards with the chips I have in hand. Yep.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I think if your team needs it, you do it. I mean, there's other people. I'm thinking of Zofar, for example. He's looking to dead end. This may have changed, by the way, but in the last stream he was talking about on the wire, that's fine as well. And if he uses the bench boost in 36, there's still opportunity. There could be opportunity in 35, 37, 38. I mean, 38, one thing we haven't mentioned is the 38 fixtures are absolutely amazing for all the good teams.
Yeah.
So in 38, Arsenal play Everton at home. You have Spurs playing Norwich away. You have Man City playing Aston Villa at home. You have Chelsea playing Watford at home. And Liverpool play Wolves at home. So you will basically have a lot of goals and you can back good teams with good fixtures. So it's an option. We haven't talked about it today, but it's not the end of the world. If you're stuck with the free hit chip and you have nowhere to use it, 36 lands exactly how you want it, your team is ready. Don't play it. Keep it for 38.
Yep. Yeah.
And by the way, before we go to the next one, I see some comments of some poor triple captainers who are talking about when do we triple captain. I think the answer is one and only Game Week 36, to be honest with you. Simply because Game Week 33 is a game week where people will struggle even for captaincy, let alone triple captaincy. And to back somebody on a triple captain in Game Week 33 is going to be very, very hard, You go for a Salah or Cancelo in a Game Week 36. I think that has very good upside.
Yeah. I like Mark Parker's comment. I used free wildcard this week and I already have most of the players in 36. Exactly the point we've been making all episode that it makes sense 31 as well. Yeah.
This is why 31 wildcard needs more consideration. I don't hate it at all.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's on free hit. Having said all of this, I'm still not sure when I'm doing it. I'm currently inclined towards 36. But having said that, I'm building towards a team for the long term. And if I feel that 33 is the right time, I'll play it then. I don't think the free hitters need to have a call today on where they want to go. For us, it's very simple. You need to basically target City, Chelsea, maybe Burnley because of the doubles. And that's it.
By the way, LR makes, I think it's LR, Pernil makes a good point, worth mentioning the title race in fourth place. Race needs to be on, which is what we tried to mention in the beginning of the episode, that it's very important to assess these teams and who's playing for what and how the landscape will change, maybe even drastically over the next few game weeks of relegation battle teams, plus the teams fighting for a top 4 European spot as well. So, yep.
Which for me makes, again, free hit 36, it actually helps that. Because if in 36, let's say Chelsea have given up, don't get Chelsea. Get more Leicester, who've got good fixtures. Maybe Leicester have given up. Get somebody else. So I like to have that optionality if things really go differently. Maybe City have won it at a canter and you expect a lot of rotation. Don't go for De Bruyne. Go for Edison, Stones, and Diaz if you want. So that's a very good point. I agree.
Yeah. So this is the last slide we have up here. We're excluding the 33 and 36 fixtures, Pras.
Yeah, I was reading one other point that Pranal is making. I think Game Week 36 free hit, I agree, is a very aggressive one as well, because you're backing against a lot of doublers. In this draft, you're backing against Kane doubling, you're backing against decent, Coutinho could go mad, other players that you haven't got on this free hit. By the way, any free hit, which is not in a blank game week, comes with risk. In a blank game week, you're basically having, instead of 5, you have 11 players. Even if your players show up and a couple of them return, you're looking at 15 points. In a double game week, a game week 33 especially, where actually the singlers also have good fixtures, there's always a risk that the guys you get don't do well and you actually get negative points on the free hit. This is a risk that you have to live with on a free hit if it's not on a blank game week.
Yep.
All right. So the next one, we had a very special request for people, and all of you who don't have 2 free hits, you can hate on these guys. I'm not going to name them, but they have 2 free hits left, and they were pleading that what do? We have 2 free hits left. So firstly, we all play a tiny violin for them that they have 2 free hits left. But look, what I did here, and this is something that you can do as well. If you go on the Scout website, FF Scout website, you can basically take out game weeks. So I've basically taken out here game week 33. I've taken out game week 36. Obviously, this doesn't have the doubles that will go into other smaller midweeks of 34, 35, 37. But this tells you, actually, this is a very interesting picture. That's, you can back a Burnley, Spurs, Wolves, Chelsea, Leeds as teams outside of these doubles. So if you have a Rafinha, actually it's fine to keep him if you're on 2 free hits, because he has Southampton, Watford, Crystal Palace, Brighton, and Brentford to play. If you have a Wolves, so I have Sa, for example, in goal as my backup keeper to Ramsdale. I'm actually very happy with that because Sa has Villa and Newcastle in 31-32. So if Ramsdale is out, I'm fine. Then when Arsenal play the double, I play Ramsdale, obviously. Then in 37, he has a double which has Norwich at home as well. So it's okay to keep a Wolves asset if you're not on a bench boost, or if you don't have to basically, if you have chips for 33 and 36. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. I think you should go on the website, take out the game week where you're free hitting, just remove it, and then see what teams you want to target.
Yep. Okay. Wow, that was a long episode. Hour and 40 minutes. No bust teams this week. I think it's unnecessary. And I think.
What are you thinking though, in terms of transfers? I mean, we don't have to talk about the whole bust team. We'll do that. By the way, we'll have a video next week where we'll talk about more exciting topics of Everton and Burnley. But we'll obviously talk about our bust teams then. But what's your initial thoughts? I mean, I know you're not doing much over the break, but anything you're thinking of in particular, or are you saving?
So I'll quickly put up my bus team here, even though we're not going to talk about it, just so that people have a reference. And to the viewers, I have Ramsdale, Robertson, Livramento, Doherty, and Trent, Son, Salah, Saka, Odegaard, Kane, Broya, and then on the bench, De Gea, Ramsdale, Digne, and Dennis. Oh my God, still have Dennis. Crazy. This guy just never goes away, huh? But I have 2 free transfers, 0.0 in the bank, so very little I can do, even with those 2 free transfers, because essentially the guys I want are James or Cancelo, and so I'm going to prioritize one of them, or maybe even both of them, and see if I can get to them. And even the Weghorst one is a very difficult thing for me as well, because I don't have a price point to move up to him unless I downgrade elsewhere. But then I also want Cancelo and James. So that's the dilemma. We have so many days left. So that's all. That's where I'll leave it at for now. Yeah.
Okay. I won't talk about my bus team as such. My transfers are actually very clear. So I thought I'll talk about it. But I have Jimenez and Dean, who both need to leave. And I have the exact money for Cancelo and Weghorst. So that's basically where I'm thinking I'll go.
Okay. So Pras is going for Cancelo plus Weghorst because you have 2 free transfers as well.
Correct.
Perfect. Okay, amazing. We had some, a lot of people join us today. A lot of great FPL managers. Thank you for the Wire boys. I think Tom, all these guys appreciate it. Shout out to Kamzi as well, a good friend of mine, and Prakash, who helps a lot with the overlays. So there's some hidden gems in the community that actually help us a lot, Pras, you and I personally. So
for sure.
Shout out to those guys, as well as all the viewers and listeners. Your support has been tremendous. And, I just want to say that, just to end it all, while we do this for the love of FPL, there's weeks where I wish I could, put more time into developing better content and so on and so forth. But sometimes life gets in the way, and I'm not as perfect as I should be. But every supportive comment really, really actually uplifts us a lot. So just want to thank people for those DMs and stuff that have been very supportive. So thank you very much, and enjoy.
You're so nice.
It's just I guess it's really late too. It's almost 1 a.m. and at this time you have your whiskey and beer and kind of hugs, and hopefully I see you soon, Pras. We've actually never met, so
I saw a post on Twitter where somebody said, who would you like to meet? I don't know. It's sitting on my draft. It's obviously there's so many close members of the community. We talk pretty much every day. Shout out to the circle. But one day we'll meet. But look, you're ever so nice. Everyone loves you. Have a good break, everyone.
Yeah. Have a good break, and maybe we'll be back for next week's episode. I'm not sure if that's confirmed yet.
Yeah, no, we are.
Okay, we are. Okay, cool.
It'll be a short one. It won't be 2 hours. We don't need to spend this much time on Burnley and Everton.
Yeah. I will timestamp this after, so you don't have to listen to the whole thing and kind of skip around. And I need to do this because this is part of my job now, is to say please hit the like button as it helps us with the YouTube algorithm. And thank you again for